Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Merlin Season 2, Episode 8, The Lady of the Lake. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder about what happened within this episode. Gaius and Merlin are on their way back from treating a patient in the lower town when they pass a cage that happens to have Freya within it. And Gaius explains that she's been brought in for sorcery, as Uther has a standing bounty for sorcerers who are brought in to be executed. And something about her makes Merlin want to save her. So when Gaius falls asleep, he returns to the lower town and frees her from the cage before running away from the bounty hunter Hillig and hiding her within the tunnels beneath Camelot. Halig, of course, then reports to the king that the druid girl that he had brought for the bounty had been stolen, and that she obviously had help, as he had seen two figures running away. Merlin, meanwhile, steals food from Arthur to feed Freya. They have heart-to-heart conversations in the tunnels, and she keeps trying to push him away because she's cursed. He keeps thinking that she's thinking her magic is a curse, though later does find out that she is literally cursed. Um, Halig does zero in on Merlin as being the one who has likely helped her. However, Arthur steps in and protects Merlin as his servant. But Halig and the knights are looking for her. Then, over the days, people start getting attacked at night by a beast, but then there's human footprints leading away, or there's no footprints at all because the Bastet is winged. And basically, throughout this, Merlin decides to forgo his destiny and run away with Freya because he's fallen in love with her, and they want to go somewhere where there's a meadow and wildflowers and they can live in peace. Even after he finds out that she is the Bastet, he still loves her because he thinks that she's special. And unfortunately, because of her insecurities, she decides to run away without Merlin. But she does end up being cornered, and then once it strikes midnight, she does turn into the Bastet while surrounded by the knights. And Helig and is then wounded. She then attacks, and Merlin helps her to get away by causing a gargoyle at the top of the palace to fall down. She runs into the tunnels. He goes to find her. He promises that he doesn't hate her, having seen what she turns into, which is basically like a panther with wings. But the wound is too deep, he can't save her, so instead he brings her to the Lake of Avalon so she can be outside in the air, remembering what she had said about wanting to go somewhere with like wildflowers and nature, because she hadn't been outside for a while. She explains that her curse was due to a man who like had found her and instead of killing her for sorcery, cursed her. And then basically she dies in Merlin's arms. He sets her up in a canoe with a bunch of greenery, sends her out to the lake, then using magic, and then uses magic again to set the boat on fire before returning back to Camelot and basically letting Gaius know that, she is past. Even Arthur notices he is upset, and they have a friend moment before he then gives Merlin a list of chores at the end of the episode. Now that we've been reminded about what happened within the episode, it is now time to rank the episode. As always, we will rank on our two ranking lists. The first is our mostly objective ranking list, which uses set values to determine the episode's score, and then the personal ranking list, which is based on my opinion of the episode. So for our mostly objective rank values, I did feel that there was quite a few that actually applied to this episode. And as always, we're going to start on the positive side, and I've highlighted those that I felt applied. So first we have our single episode supporting character introduction, which is our villain of the episode, Halig, who is a bounty hunter who works for Uther and goes out, finds sorcerers, brings them back, gets the bounty, and then Uther gets to execute them. So it's a wonderful working relationship between the two. We then also have our multi-episode supporting character introduction, which is Freya. This is the only episode in which she appears as herself, but then she does become the Lady of the Lake as her body was given to the lake. And of course, she was cursed to be a Bastet. We then have our supporting relationship development, which is, of course, Merlin and Freya. Merlin. Now, I had questioned whether this should be the main relationship or a supporting relationship because I think she's the only romantic relationship that Merlin gets in the series. After this, he basically stays forever single. So, with that in mind, this is his only relationship. However, because it only lasts one episode, I did decide ultimately to have it as a supporting relationship. But in theory, it is Merlin's main relationship because it's like the only one he gets. And that brings us up to 6 points so far. We then have the successful emotional impact, which of course is because they did such a good job throughout the episode of building Freya and Merlin's relationship, showing how deeply he has feelings for her, having their heart-to-hearts in the tunnels, wanting to run away together, his feelings being so strong he's willing to give up his destiny, as well as accepting her even in her beast form. That when he does lose her, well, first he does a really good job of showing his grief so that we as the audience have an easier time sharing it, but also because we've seen the bond, because we've seen the growth, because they put the time and effort into it, when she dies, when she gets her send off on the lake, it is emotionally impactful and it does elicit an emotional response, which is worth another 3 points. And then last but not least on the positives, we have the world building, which is the existence of a Bastet curse, which is basically that an ordinary person can be cursed into basically forcibly turning into a beast at the stroke of midnight and then is driven to attack people before they then will turn back into a human as they would appear normal during the day. With all of these positives, that leaves us with a plus 13 points, but there were also some negatives to the episode. So the first is a minus 1 point for character regression, and this is Merlin being willing to leave his destiny. He's been told and acknowledged and committed to his destiny being to help Arthur become the greatest king who has ever lived, to unite all of Albion and to bring magic back. And yet, for his love of Freya, he is willing to turn his back on all of that, all his destiny. And if Arthur can't fulfill his destiny because Merlin isn't there, that would then lead to no Albion, no magic coming back, etc., etc. Essentially, very bad things. So, while I understand that you're in love with the girl, at the same time, the consequences of turning your back on the destiny, very but negative, and he doesn't even pause for a moment, at least on screen, to think that maybe his destiny is worth more, or his duty to his destiny may be worth more. And so that is why it's a -1, as he is turning his back on the destiny he has previously acknowledged and committed to. We then have negative messaging or behavior, which of course, again, has to do with Merlin, always seems to be doing the negative things. And that, of course, is the theft. He steals food from Arthur. He steals from the kitchens. He steals one of Morgana's dresses for Freya when they're planning to run away. He steals Freya. from the cage that she is in. So there's a lot of theft, which thievery is a crime, therefore negative behavior. And that is worth -2. Even if the intention's good, still negative behavior. So -2. And then last but not least, one more -2 points. And that, of course, is due to the supporting relationship regression or breakup. Obviously, Freya has passed on. The relationship is not able to continue beyond that. She is now the Lady of the Lake, a ghost spiritual entity. She is no longer human or somebody that Merlin can be with. Therefore, obviously, that relationship has ended. Now, it's not necessarily a break up because she passed on, but definitely a regression because there's no more progression beyond this. And that is why it is a -2 points. Though given that she remains like his only real love interest throughout the series, maybe that does count for something, but I still will count these -2 points. Which brings this episode overall to an 8 out of 10 on our mostly objective ranking. And that brings our mostly objective ranking so far to, in first place, The Once and Future Queen. This episode actually comes in second place, The Lady of the Lake. Then we have The Curse of Cornelius Sagan, The Sins of the Father, The Nightmare Begins, Lancelot and Guinevere, Beauty and the Beast, and currently in eighth, The Witchfinder. And then for my personal feelings on the episode, I believe this is the introduction to the Arthur Waite jokes. When Merlin's trying to steal food for Freya, he basically informs Arthur that he's decided to put him on a diet to make sure that he stays fighting, like that he doesn't gain weight. Arthur says he's fighting fit, and Merlin says that he wants to keep it that way. So he basically leaves him bread and an apple while taking all of his like sausage and cheese to go and give that to Freya, who's in the tunnels. Later on, he also then pours water for Arthur and then into the empty jug he uses magic while Arthur is distracted to steal like his drumstick and his sausages. And again, Arthur is like he gaslights Arthur into thinking like, no, you never had a second drumstick. Of course, you already ate those sausages. But as he's leaving, he does get caught by Halig, who then, you know, knocks the food out of his hands onto the floor and tries to capture him. Then Arthur comes along, saves Merlin, and then notes that that's his food that Merlin has in his hands now because he had to pick it up after Halig left. And Merlin once again makes a comment on keeping Arthur in shape, which again I think is great for the relationship. And then the overall love story, like I said in the objective ranking, I feel like it was really well done. I feel like they took the time to really put in quite a few scenes between Arthur and Freya, them sharing multiple moments to really build up that, yes, they've only known each other a few days, but clearly there's a connection there. They've had these conversations. He feels like he can be himself around her. And they obviously did a good enough job building up that relationship that when she does pass, it is emotionally impactful and it is something that obviously stays with the character. As I've mentioned before, this is his only love interest in the series. They even do share a kiss, a couple of kisses actually, throughout the episode before ultimately she does end up passing away. Now, I do think that the effects have improved. I mean, it was obviously obvious with the Bastet when she turned into the Bastet that it was kind of cartoonish. Like it just didn't necessarily look like it belonged within a reality. So the effects weren't amazing, but in comparison to other magical creatures that they've had on the show, I do think they have improved. And I think it maybe was partially because they went with a more simple design of a panther with wings as the form of the Bastet. However, as I have complained since the beginning of the series, they swing at air. They never look like they hit the creature that is in the special effects ever. Like, we see her running. She gets surrounded by the knights and Helig. She then transforms before anybody's touched her. She transforms. And then it looks like basically they're creeping up on her. They've got their swords out, but they're not even swinging the swords. Yet somehow she ended up wounded. And I'm like, where was this wound? Maybe I missed it. Maybe I glanced away from the screen for a second to make a note or something. But next thing you know, she's escaping. Merlin's causing a distraction. She's flying away. He finds her in the tunnels and she's mortally wounded. And I'm like, but I didn't see them hit her like at all. Like they didn't even swing the sword. They were like just creeping up with their swords at the ready. I'm like, I don't see where she was wounded. And like I said, I could have just glanced away to make a note, and that's when the wound happened, but I completely missed it. So I was kind of like, I don't see it. And even like when they were supposedly fighting the Bastet, they're like several feet away, swinging their swords like they're nowhere near the creature. And that has kind of been a running theme with Merlin throughout like the entire series so far. But I do also think that the scene when she dies in this being sent into Avalon is incredibly beautifully done. They have this amazing moment. Merlin's emotion is very raw and very on his face, like you can visibly see it. You know, they share the sweet moment. He remembered their conversations, brought her to nature, brought her to the lake so she could have a beautiful sight before her death, which I feel like I've also seen that somewhere else and I can't remember where. But either way, no matter where it is, that's actually like a beautiful sentiment. Then, of course, it's like I do wonder though where he got the canoe, but I'm assuming he conjured it with magic because it wasn't there when she was dying. And I don't foresee him like being able to sneakily drag a canoe um into the woods from Camelot. So I'm assuming he conjured it with magic, but we don't know where it came from. But suddenly there's a canoe. It fits her perfectly. He gets a bunch of like the greenery from around the area to fill in the boat, give her a soft place to lay, puts her into Morgana's dress so she is, not in rags anymore. And then with magic, he sends the boat out, and then with magic again, he sets the fire and he watches it before returning. And then I also love the aftermath of, Gaius having known that he had helped the girl comforting him at the end, and then even Arthur, not knowing what happened, is able to notice that Merlin is depressed, and he comes over and, playfully comforts him, brings up that Merlin was talking about his weight, and Merlin doubles down about his weight, gets noogie on the head, the gets noogied. I don't know if there's another term for it, but I'm sure if you look it up, you know, fist ahead. Anyways, and then you rub around a bit. And then he makes Merlin smile. Once he sees that Merlin has cheered up a bit, then he gives him his chores, which also is a little bit is comedic timing for that, which ends it on a high note. Ultimately, I have to say it is my favorite episode so far in the season. The only real negative that I have for it personally is that the effects weren't necessarily great, and whatever mortal wound happened either happened from a distance or happened so quickly that if you glance away from the screen for like a second, you will miss it. Um, and therefore, I decided to rank it a 9 out of 10. And that then brings our season 2 ranking so far in the personal ranking to, in first, this episode, The Lady of the Lake, then The Nightmare Begins, The Curse of Cornelius Sagan, Beauty and the Beast, The Sins of the Father, The Witchfinder, Lancelot and Guinevere, and then in last place so far, in 8th, is The Once and Future Queen. And that brings us now to our final segment, which is our series ranking so far, where we will be ranking each of the seasons against each other. Starting on our mostly objective ranking side, we have Season 1 at 69.23%, and Season 2 so far has earned 49 out of a possible 120 points. Then on our personal ranking side, we had Season 1 ending with 66.92%, and Season 2 so far has a total of 52 points out of 120. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Merlin Season 2, Episode 8, The Lady of the Lake. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.